And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the other side of midnight. And boy, is it going to be a Phil After Midnight show tonight, or this morning, or wherever you are on this round, spinning, rotating, torsion, vibrating globe. You know, the magic time between dusk and dawn, the other side of midnight, when things that you would look at in daytime and say, come on, you look at them again at this time, and it's kind of, interesting. And boy, do we have an interesting show this morning for everyone. In fact, it's so chock full of stuff that I'm going to get right to it, because if I don't, 2 hours are going to flit by, and you're all going to send me these terrible emails saying, we need more hours. We're working on it, all right? Just be assured we're working on it. The first thing I want to do this morning is I want to send out a big shout-out and a thank you to Rich Rowland, Scotty's able and trusted assistant and son. Rich has done an amazing job of organizing our website tonight. If you go to othersideofmidnight.com, I recommend everyone everywhere on the planet who can hear us, please go to othersideofmidnight.com and click on tonight's guests. That will take you to the show page tonight. And under Radio with Pictures, we have both links and pictures and astounding things to talk about. We have guest websites, we have newsy websites. I mean, there's all kinds of space news, so we try to put it all here so that as we go through the morning and we're talking about this stuff, you can click on the links. This is where you'll find them as we talk about various stories or various aspects of this story. So just kind of peruse and get familiar and, sit back, because we're going to take you for one heck of a ride. One heck of a ride this morning. So let me begin. If you'll scroll down on othersideofmidnight.com on our guest page, we have guests this morning. We have Will Ferrara. Am I pronouncing that, Will, badly?
Farrar.
Farrar.
Yeah, it depends where you are in the country. Some people say fair. We say Farrar over here.
Okay. And we have Andrew Curry. No problem there. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Richard.
And way over in Manchester, England, where the dawn is broken nicely, is Bob Harrison. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Richard, from Birmingham.
Oh, you're in Birmingham. Why did I... Oh, I know, because you work for the city of Manchester.
No, city of Birmingham.
Really? How did I get Manchester on my brain? Well, I know I landed there once, so does that explain it? Probably not. And finally, but not least, is Keith Laney, who is joining us from North Carolina this morning. And he took a nap, I hope.
Oh, yes.
Good. Okay, let me start with Will, since he's the new kid on the block, and you guys have all met everybody else before. Let me read a couple lines here, and then we'll swing into what we're going to talk about, because this really, after 30-some years of me doing this could be the break point. This could be the demarcation. This could be where we can catapult this into a totally new, pun intended, dimension. Because NASA's done something that they really haven't done with us up until now. They've been honest. They've given us honest data. And with that data, we have taken it, we have run with it, and you're going to see some astonishing developments around this data this morning. So let's start with Will. Will grew up in Maryland. In fact, I grew up in Maryland, where he started his career in technology at a very young age of 16 and is currently the Information Technology Director of a national healthcare company, as well as the man behind the Space Anomaly YouTube channel, What's Up in the Sky 37, and the website whatsupinthesky.com. Will attributes his keen eye for spotting anomalies in the imagery to his fascination with images returned from various space missions, as well as his travels around the United States visiting national and state parks. Will is also known for applying various technological approaches in his hunt for anomalies in space imagery, some of which he's going to talk about tonight, which have helped him make the case that there has indeed been obfuscation. That word doesn't normally come up in ordinary conversation, so I really want to do it again. Obfuscation in the past. Will is also, and this is dangerous, you should never put this in your bio, Will. Will is also an accomplished musician and artist, which means we're going to do the same thing with Will we did with Andrew. We're going to ask him to submit music and art at some point. And he can be contacted at his website or by email at will@willferrara.net. Will, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Richard. Excited to be here tonight.
It's really a kind of a cool night to drop in on the other side of midnight. So we got time. So why don't you kind of give us a background of what got you into this? Obviously, traveling around to state parks is not the whole story. And then we'll move into the rest of the solar system as we kind of get a feel for your eye.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I started getting into this when I was a little bit younger. I'm about 35 years old. And probably about 10 or 15 years ago, I was driving back from Florida, and Coast to Coast came on. And it had you on there as one of the people. I think it was a roundtable discussion, and it was talking Mars anomalies. And I got online, I started searching. And this is probably, just as the internet started coming up, and I watched it grow, and about 3 or 4 years ago, I said, you know what? I'm tired of all these videos on YouTube that don't have links. Like, they'll put this amazing picture from Mars, our moon, one of the planets, and I can't find it myself and show it myself. And I said,
hang on. You mean you could not find original source material, source imagery where the image came from?
Exactly. And that day, I said, you know what? I have a YouTube channel. I started it, and I said, I'm going to give people the links. And and all I do really is I pull up a picture, and I hit the record button. My screenshot grabs the screen, and my little picture goes up in the corner, and I just go over the picture. And it's gone in the last 3 years. I've gotten up to about, I think tonight we'll probably go over 18,000 subscribers.
Cool.
I think we're up to almost 8 million views on some of the videos, which is not that. If you put it up to, Lady Gaga or PewDiePie, we're not talking huge numbers.
Don't compare yourself to Lady Gaga. Come on.
But, for YouTube and our niche that we have here and the subject matter, it's brought so many people into my life that I never would have known. And through Facebook and just through contacting people, just getting involved with a group of people. There's about, when you put all the groups of us together, there's about 128,000 of us on Facebook who share pictures. Not everybody's active, but we call it the United Family of Anomaly Hunters is the branch of everything, and we all have our little niche in there that we do, and we've got our own groups together, but that's where we share our pictures and everything. It's just amazing how the public is actually taking it. People are posting this stuff on their Facebook pages where their coworkers are seeing it. There's family have seen it. So I've kind of watched it go from being in the dark a little bit, if you post this stuff, you're kind of kooky and out there, to being more of a, more nonchalant. People just put it out there for you to see, and they have no trouble sharing it. If you look at the news the last couple of days, it's always moving towards, I think, that D word, disclosure.
Yep.
I think we're on a slow burn towards that, and we've always been over the last.
Well, I think the burn is accelerating to a forest fire because, boy, we got stuff to talk about tonight.
Yeah, that's what got me into it, and that's the imagery itself. Just to be able to sit in my computer and actually go to another planet, it's amazing. And a lot of times in my videos, I get a little feisty with NASA, or I'll say something. But the European Space Agency, all these things. When I find obfuscation, or I'm looking through an air level analysis, and I see that something's been changed. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. I get a little angry, but they are the ones that provide us the image. And you started out with the perfect thing. They actually have been honest with this new data that's come back, and they've shown us, and I expect to be seen. It took a little bit for it to come down after there was some engine problems with the Ion, and which I think was a little bit of a stalling. You
remember a couple of days ago there was the Nature paper excuse?
Yeah.
Oh, we submitted this paper to Nature and the dog ate it, so we can't show you the pictures? No, that was another excuse. I'm being a little facetious. But yeah, they've been delaying because I don't think behind the scenes, in our metaphorical roosters and owls scenario that we stole freely from Chris Carter many, many years ago, there are two groups, as we propose politically. There's the roosters that want to crow about this stuff and get it out there, and there are the owls who want to sit on it and keep us in the dark. And there's been this fight behind the scenes between the two groups, and it looks like the roosters are finally winning.
One can only hope.
Okay, so
One can only hope.
hold it there, Will. I want to go to Bob now in Birmingham. I'll never live that down, because Bob has done an amazing job on his website, Sidonia Quest. If you look up above Will's picture tonight on othersideofmidnight.com on the guest page, you'll see Bob listed with Sidonia Quest next to his name. So, Bob, you're the one that's done the most interesting analysis of this amazing Occator Crater city, or two cities, a tale of two cities on a small asteroid. There are 8 million stories in the... Anyway, so Bob, why don't you take us through where we should click and what we should look at as you describe what you see? Because one of the things I wanted to do this morning was to assemble this panel so that people can hear and see that we're not all in lockstep. We all have our own perspectives. We have our own analytical techniques. We have our own kind of comprehensions of what we're seeing. And it's that variety of voices, that variety of opinions, that variety of analyses that strengthen what any one of us is doing, because we're all seeing, certainly in this data, the same astonishing things.
Right. So people need to go to the Radio with Pictures menu at the top of the page and to pick the option number 5, which is NASA's Ceres Lights.
Okay.
And take it.
Sidonia Quest, the occasional journal.
Yes, this is where I've put things that don't normally fit into the rest of the structure of the website.
Okay.
So, as we know, on Wednesday, the Dawn team released this amazing image of Occator Crater, which looks like a complex, artificial complex of some kind.
It looks like you're looking down from ISIS, and they've taken a photograph at night of L.A. or Atlanta or Tokyo, or, I mean, geometry within geometry. It's absolutely astonishing.
Exactly. So I don't know how you want to tackle this.
Well, let's just go sequentially. In other words, this is an image-driven story. That's why we have Radio with Pictures. So just take us through the images and give us, as we scroll down the page slowly, kind of the high points of what we should be looking for. Right.
Well, we'll start from the beginning then, because perhaps not all listeners have been following
the
story of the Ceres Lights. The Ceres Lights might have been first seen by the Hubble Space Telescope from Earth orbit as a light patch on Ceres. And the Dawn spacecraft itself first spotted them when it was about 150,000 miles away. And so figure 2, as we scroll down, shows that light spot on Ceres.
It's the most obvious, brightest thing on the planetoid, a new term, from that distance.
Yes. So if we scroll down to figure 3, this is when it really becomes anomalous. This is an animation of Ceres rotating.
Actual images.
And we discover that the light is two very bright reflective points inside that Occator Crater. And it's almost like a lighthouse signalling to us. As you know, in correspondence, though NASA called them lights, I was calling them beacons because it seemed to be signalling to space. So very bright, very much more reflective than the rest.
In fact, in this rotation sequence, which is a sequence of individual images that NASA took from the Dawn spacecraft, and then they put them together as this movie, as the lights move from west to east over beyond the terminator, it almost looks as if they're shining in the dark.
Yes, and that's what's shown in figure 4, which is the last frame from that animation.
Excellent.
And you can just see before it turns out of sight that the central bright spot is still picking up the light of the sun. It's really, it hasn't really dulled down at all. And I know that some people on Keith Laney's discussion site even suggested it might be due to luminescent chemicals.
I was thinking something more active, like if this was a structure, and the reason I even initially thought it might be structures is because the location of the lights on Ceres is 19.5. Mm-hmm. Now, what are the odds due to chance that could be just coincidence, chance?
Spooky, isn't it?
Yep. So if it was done by somebody who put it at 19.5 to be maybe a beacon to attract us when we got space flight where we could go and find out what these things are, it occurred to me that maybe it was made out of materials that fluoresced or stored solar energy and then released it after dark as a further enhancement of the come hither and take a closer look signal.
Yes, it'd be interesting whether NASA have actually taken any pictures of it on the night side.
Well, I think we can now rule that out, because when you actually do the geometry, which I then did after that first blush, no, this stuff really turns off when the sun goes down. Mm-hmm. But it's so reflective. I've seen quotes of like in excess of 50%. My measurement said it was closer to 100. But Christopher Russell, who's the project manager, project scientist, I guess, he said to Linda Moulton Howe in that really excellent interview the other day that it was about 50% reflectivity. Now, on a little planetoid where the average reflectivity is like coal or charcoal, 4 or 5%, something 10 times really looks brilliant, and of course, that's what we're seeing. Continue, please.
Right, if we go on to figure 5, which is just below that.
Scrolling. Oh, and let me tell everybody, for those who aren't following othersideofmidnight.com, click on the guest link. That takes you to the guest page tonight, and then simply follow the instructions. It's item number 5 at the top, under Radio with Pictures. That's Bob's website. We're scrolling slowly down this really amazing article. I don't know how you put this together so quickly. It takes me longer to do this stuff. In fact, it takes me forever now that I got this show to do, but I'm impressed with your organization, Robert.
So, anyway, figure 5, as dawn spirals closer to Ceres, we're getting better images. Now, in this image, we're beginning to see that the lights are actually a cluster of smaller lights, just beginning to see that. But the glare of the reflections are so great they're overloading the electronic camera, and so there's we can see that there's probably much more detail in there that we can't see.
There's certainly hints, but see that raises a problem to me. CCD imaging sensors are known for what's called linearity over a brightness of thousands to one or tens of thousands to one. We just did a little calculation here on the air where we showed that the brightness, if these things are reflecting 50% of sunlight and the background is reflecting 5, they're about 10 times brighter than the background, right?
Yeah.
So why are they overexposed? Why can't you take one image with everything nicely exposed? Are they, in fact, jiggling with the numbers so they're not giving us the accurate reflectivity?
There was one image, because he took several images at this altitude, which seemed very dark, and perhaps that was an attempt at a short exposure shot of them. But it didn't make a great deal of difference to the glare. So if we scroll down again
to figure
Figure 6, this is Dallas and Fort Worth. I was trying to find Liverpool and Manchester because the footprint of these, the two main areas of lights in that figure 5, that's about the footprint of Dallas and Fort Worth, or Liverpool and Manchester. So the Dallas one gives you some idea of because this is a nighttime shot and it's glowing under its street lights and everything. Gives you an idea of the sort of geometry of an artificial landscape to compare with the new image. I'll have to assume that people in Dallas and Fort Worth get along a lot better than people in Liverpool and Manchester. They've allowed the cities to merge together.
Almost.
Yeah. So we come to Dawn's big surprise. So we're back to image 1 again, masquerading as figure 7.
Okay.
And
look at that geometry.
So the central light, which I'm calling LZ1, is, it's just like a spreading radial city with suburbs and grid patterns, and LZ2, as I'm calling it, which is the other brighter spot nearer the crater wall.
Can you spell those names? Because your mic is kind of blurring some things.
Right, I'll just... right, basically it's short for Light Zone 1.
Okay.
And Light Zone 2.
Everything has to have an acronym. Okay. Well, you can't play NASA unless you make up acronyms.
Yes, well, it designates them. So, this new technique they've used on this image, which you explained the other night, they've taken a short exposure shot and a long exposure shot, and then merged them together, morphed them together, which is allowed to cut through the glare. And
even here, though, the bright spots are still overexposed.
Yes.
How damn bright have to they be?
Very. But in the case of LZ2, the area nearer the crater wall,
right,
the main area of brightness is now a light grey colour, and you're beginning to see. So it's been toned down, but the satellite bright spots around it are still very bright, and we're beginning to see that the mounds, face-sized mounds, perhaps the biggest is probably around the site of the DMM pyramid at Cydonia.
Like a couple of miles. Well, the whole crater, we know Akator is about 60 miles across, so you can just take a ruler, put it on your computer screens or your smartphone screens or tablet screens out there, and you can see that these things are not overexposed blobs, but they're actual geometric. In fact, if we scroll down further, you'll see what Bob's done. Keep going, Bob.
Yep. Right, well, the next one, you can begin to see that those mounds,
Figure 8,
those bright satellite bright spots around LZ2,
look at that geometry.
Are actually mounds. They're faceted to most of them are tending to, looks like, towards four sides. They're obviously not pristine.
So are they four-sided pyramids?
Well, if we take the one at the 6 o'clock position, that's quite square.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we go through the formation of pyramids, and the one at about the 11 o'clock position, now that looks very four-sided and oblong. And the one below it looks like a trapezium, a four-sided one, and then the one below that is quite four-sided.
Now, if I look at this geometry correctly, the light should be coming from the 3 o'clock position, from the right, streaming left.
Yeah.
And you can see maybe maybe toward 4 o'clock, there appear to be bright sides on these things and darker sides, like they're really big, and we're seeing shadowed areas.
Yes. They seem to have got things to the position where we can see highlighting and shadow now on these things.
This is absolutely astonishing.
And of course, if we look at the main bright area, which is now grey between all these, we'll call them pyramids.
Are we going down to figure 9?
No, we're still on.
Oh, we're still on 8. Okay.
On 8. Linear lines, and there's lots of bumps which seem geometrical. It's sort of, so it looks almost as though there's giant buildings there. Although, as we see later on, and I think somebody's done this perspective drawing, which shows it just as how I'm interpreting that. So anyway, we'll go off LZ.
I think he's teasing you, Andrew.
Oh, it's Andrew. Sorry. That perspective drawing is exactly how I see that area. So we see.
Now hold it there. This is important. you're in Birmingham, Birmingham, folks, not Manchester, and you're looking at this, and you're going through writing this paper, and you're looking at the geometry, you're magnifying, you're doing enhancements and all that, and you come up in your mind with what this would have looked like if you could have flown an airplane, let's say, 5 miles above the surface or something, and look sideways, look down obliquely.
Yeah.
And then Andrew does his thing. He's the artist we're going to introduce momentarily, and you're telling us that his shot matches what your mental 3D oblique view would look like if you could have put that into an image.
Yes.
Wow. That's called independent confirmation, folks. Continue.
It'll be interesting to see when we get even close to Ceres how it turns out.
Well, you realize that this image was taken from 915 miles. They're saying by December, hint, hint, by Christmas, they're going to go down with the ion engine to 235 miles. Just divide one into the other and you'll see how much bigger and how much more resolution on this geometry we cannot now, since NASA has committed themselves with this image, we can't help but seeing.
Right. And before we leave figure 8, if we go down to the central zone, LZ1, beginning to see that it's very gridded, and we're getting a 3D feel to it now. It's not flat.
Do you see the oval shape I'm seeing in both of these?
You mean the perimeter?
The outer perimeter.
Yes, it is. It's
in
very
fact,
circular.
To me, these look like ruined versions, open to the sky, to the vacuum, to the stars, to space versions of the Pyramid Lone Mountain thing 250 miles away in the Southern Hemisphere series, a little way around the planet to the east.
Either that or a collapsed dome, perhaps. But yes, it's very structural looking. So if we scroll down to figure 9...
Got it.
Which it's got a title, a collapsed ruin or archaeology dome.
Oh my God!
This is an extreme enlargement.
Look at that right angle down at 7 o'clock, or about 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's impressive. That little bit there.
Yeah. And then the one above it that looks like it was kind of like have you ever seen an aerial shot of the U.S. Capitol? How it's got the dome in the middle and the two rectangular things on both sides, east and west. Yeah. That's what that looks like.
Yeah.
Except the scale is so much bigger.
And the right-hand side of the image, or of LZ1, it's you've got the very 3D gridded effect there, and straight line geometry. So that's very fascinating. At the sort of 10 o'clock, 3 o'clock position, things are more still gridded, but not as geometrical. But it's very 3D there as well.
It looks like the left-hand side of this structure, the dome, as you're proposing, is in better condition than the left-hand side.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's well worth people coming back to that image, because the more I look at it, the more I see in it.
Yep.
In terms of straight line gridded geometry. So if we scroll down to figure 10.
Oh, an oldie but a goodie.
So so what? As well as the idea, we've been thinking whether it's we're comparing it with the 4-mile high Ceres pyramid that we were talking on the show a few weeks ago. Whether in fact it's not hasn't come from a tall pyramidal thing, but quite a low-rise archaeology, perhaps. So I've put in that picture of Moonbase Alpha, which is effectively a low-rise archaeology.
Okay.
So we come to figure 11, which is light zone 2.
Right.
So coming back to what we were talking about, which I've rotated so we can better see that what we're calling pyramids at the moment seem to have an arrangement that town, we'll call them a town planner or whatever is decided, that they'd have some perhaps a geometrical arrangement. I haven't looked into this, but not completely random.
Not at all. Not at all. So if we have time, if folks have time, which they will after we're off the air, they will go and they will read everything you've written, which is your analysis step by step, taking us all the way from far away, 150,000 miles, all the way down to the surface and to that potentially perspective view, and then to the second city or zone or dome or arcology or whatever. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to finish off the super enlargement of LZ2, you can see there's a very twisted grid structure in that middle area. A pattern of connected things, a cellular pattern, and it would be really interesting to see that when we get sharper images, high resolution sharper images. Anyway, you were going to say, Richard?
No, I was just going to say that your organization is perfect. People will have time to gently read and look, and I suggest everybody look and then look again, because as Bob just said, the more you stare at this, the more you're going to see. Your eye brain kind of gets used to the geometry, and you see why it doesn't resemble anything natural.
That's the article anyway.
Cool. Okay, hold it there. We're at the bottom of the hour. In fact, we're past the bottom of the hour, but I didn't want to interrupt you. Everyone, you're on the other side of midnight, and we're going through the solar system. We've landed near Ceres in space. We're looking down at what appears to be an ancient ruined city, or two, that geometrically look just like cities on this planet. And of course, that's impossible. Unless maybe NASA hasn't quite been telling us the truth up until Wednesday. We shall return. And good morning once again. My name is Richard C. Hoagland, and you are on the other side of midnight. And we're exploring in situ with NASA imagery what appears to be the first bona fide, almost incontestable ruins of a couple of ancient cities and a crater on the small dwarf planet Ceres, located millions and millions of miles away from us tonight, illuminated by the sun, and showing a geometric structure that is almost impossible to believe can be anything else but the ruins of some extraordinary civilization. Now, what I'm going to do next is introduce our resident Other Side of Midnight artist, Andrew Curry. Andrew, why don't you take it away and take us to what you've been working on, because frankly, your work is almost as good as NASA's, but it's from the different perspectives that allow us who don't look at 2D imagery as reality, to look at it in perspective and to gain some feel for what in the world we're looking at.
Thank you, Richard. So again, thank you for having me back on the show. Really enjoyed our last two visits and eager to kind of explore this one. Can I give you a little bit of a backstory on sort of how I came to this?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I did a couple of sort of digital renderings before. I know Keith has one of them up on his website, and I did an earlier one from Pluto. And when I saw this, there were two things that triggered me. One was there was some distinctly similar structures that I, just through my kind of exploration of this model of giant megalithic arcologies, repeating itself in what I think are ruins here in the Ceres crater. The other thing that really intrigued me and actually really disturbed me was when I read Linda Moulton Howe's interview with Professor Christopher Russell. Mm-hmm. And one of the telling statements that he said that really annoyed me was when he said, puffing out white powder.
Yeah, I got this vision of talcum powder behind of some baby or something.
Yeah, and I know he went on to talk about it could be an underwater, or it could be an underground ocean with salt coming up, or it could be ice. But if we go to figure 8, which is the illustration I did, and that's back on Other Side of Midnight. So we have to go to number 8, and if you click on that,
okay.
So that's the rendering I did. Let everybody get there first.
Wait a minute. No, the rendering's not number 8. The number 8 is an actual NASA image from JPL on othersideofmidnight.com.
I have it as 8.
I think your image is number 10. It's on my screen. It says number 10.
Oh, interesting.
Refresh it.
You have to refresh.
Okay.
Things are moved around. See?
Okay. So number 10, perfect 10. All right. So
oh my God.
Yeah.
Holy! I can't say that. By the way, last night one of my guests used some profanity, which I was told later by Mr. Bell is not allowed, because I didn't want to break this too soon, but we are actually now being carried by terrestrial broadcast stations. We are being simulcast, not only on the web, but also on radio. And so you have to kind of be careful of language. So, yes, I can say, oh my, and then I have to stop. Good heavens.
Well, congratulations.
Good
congratulations,
grief.
Richard. Yeah.
This is mind-blowing.
Well, and this was it. It was that article of just dismissing this
Russell.
as sorry?
Christopher Russell's statements about talcum powder.
Yeah.
White powder. Yeah, really,
Yeah,
white powder. Chris, come on.
exactly.
White powder does not create geometry.
Well, that was the thing, and Keith and I had a conversation, and we talked about the big gaping hole that has that huge right angle cut, which I've tried to show in the illustration. Mm-hmm. And then there's these two, what we were calling buck teeth, literally suspended in midair. And if you go in close on the NASA images, you can see dark shadows being cast underneath.
Okay, so let's go back to the guest page, othersideofmidnight.com guest page. Click on number 8, or actually probably number 9. Number 9 is better because that's a close-up.
Yeah.
All right, now you can see the features that you're describing there.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll go back to your perspective view. In fact, going back and forth is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So everything... Go ahead.
Well, what I noticed and what Keith and I talked about is if you go in really close on what we were calling euphemistic, okay, now I can't even speak, jokingly, the buck teeth or Bugs Bunny's teeth.
But that's those two bright features on the left in that dark space just to the left of the top of the dome, the bright area.
Yeah. Underneath it, you can literally see more linear lines either supporting it.
You can.
Yeah.
And this is the NASA data. This is not your interpretation. This is the straight NASA view with a little bit of enhancement.
Exactly. It's the NASA stuff. And then I just, accentuated it and brought it out more what might be missing just because, it's so far away. What I saw here, and it was funny because I was out for a walk and I was walking along a path and I noticed some exposed roots beside the path. And there was yet another tree root running over top of this one root. And what started to happen in the middle of these roots is that you started to get this dome-like structure. So what I thought was, when I looked at the imagery, is that there must have been a huge cataclysm here. And this is the model, and this is how I interpreted it. And as these huge buttresses sort of fell over and started piling on top of each other in the middle, almost like pancaking, they literally emerged into a dome at the middle. That's sort of how I saw it.
Oh, you mean like jackstraws?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
See, my thinking would be, given that this stuff is pretty strong, I mean, come on, we're talking about a super technology here, because you're not going to create cities like this, dome cities on an alien asteroid, unless you do have some super technology. I would think that maybe the whole dome kind of maintained its integrity and just kind of collapsed as a unit. Yeah. At least that's what I think I'm seeing. But again, we won't know until we get better data, but this is really, I can't believe what you were able to do with this.
Oh, well, thank you. And what I started to notice again, and it was very similar to what we were doing with Lonely Mountain, is under this what we think might be a glass structure, you start to see the symmetry of what's underneath it. You can see that sort of on the right-hand side. And again, I mean, I'm enhancing it. I'm trying to get a feeling for it, but I'm bringing it out. And then as I move to the second arcology over in my rendering, at least in the upper right, I really started to notice that well, it was something that you had mentioned to me. It looks a lot older, and I absolutely agree. I think that the surface, what I think is still a partial dome standing, to me it looks like there is on the sort of more further region. It's very dirty and dusty. I know Keith sort of chimed in with that comment as well. And I agree with what you just said and what Bob was saying, is that the more time you spend just observing these images, the more that comes out. I mean, even one of Bob's images that we were just looking at, I started to see some things that I went, whoa, I wish I could take this back and do it again.
See, now that's important, because I wanted people in our audience tonight to realize that you've got here 4 independent folks who really haven't had a lot of time to share notes or share whatever, and each of us are coming at this and coming up with pretty much the same thing, which is the independent confirmation that the scientific process totally demands.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And I, again, going back to the sort of puffy powder and this, or ice or salt, and then looking at the fluting of what I think are girders, like you can see that on my rendering in the central image. There's this literally fluting of the structure, and there's just too many rectilinear lines. There's too much reflection. There's too much connection. There's a huge radial symmetry here that's just phenomenal. And yeah, no, that's sort of where my perspective. This was really hard, Richard. This one was tough because it is in ruins, that I think, and it was. But it was, as I mentioned to you before, I think there are times when I do these renderings, just recently, and I get an eerie feeling that I'm not supposed to be peering into this. It just ever so often pops up,
Really?
And then I've had that sensation, but it's been such a thrill to sort of speculate on this and follow the model and try to, because I know for some people it's hard to see patterns. It's not an easy thing, and if you're not a visual person, if you're not an image specialist, if it's just not what you do, it's hard to sit down for 10 minutes or an hour and look at these things and go, well, I don't see that. But if you spend the time, and if we can help enhance in this way, or at least it's an idea, then we might be able to communicate maybe some of the essence.
You even have the shadows from the other part of the dome sticking up over the so-called rabbit's teeth.
Yeah.
There's slightly dimmer sections kind of under the shade of the dome that's still surviving and sticking up higher.
And you see that in the NASA data. At least I see it.
See, that's crucial. All you've done is taken the same data and rotated it about, 70 degrees?
Yeah.
Like we're looking at about a 30-degree angle to the horizontal?
Yeah.
And now, what you need to do, folks, is you need to go between image 9 and image 10. Go back and forth. Or, better yet, take them into an image program, put them up side by side on the screen, and look at the detail that Andrew has recorded. Compare it to the detail in the original NASA data, and you'll see that everything he's got here is not made up. It's actually on the photo, but from this perspective view, which allows us, who don't look at things from the top down or in aerial imagery all the time, to understand what we're seeing.
Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, that's sort of where I was coming from, and I had some, as I said, it was just there are times when I'm doing this, and it's from the heart. It's a joy, but there were some really eerie moments, I have to tell you, and I guess part of it is, if these were massive domes, if these were massive megalithic arcologies that are absolutely ancient, it's a haunting feeling to be drawing the bones of these places. This
is exactly like I imagine Ballard felt when he first viewed the Titanic.
Yes.
We're talking at a place where millions of people died. Yes. And the idea that we're just on the other side of 9/11 and that tragedy and what happened here on this planet, and then you look at what could have happened out there, and I got the same feelings that this is a sacred site. This is something that should be treated reverentially, because not only did an awful lot of people die here, but the way they died, the history, the war, the catastrophe, whatever took place, is obviously relevant to us, and we need to know what happened, so maybe we can avoid being as stupid as everybody else in whatever happened there. Let me go back to Russell. What do you think that Christopher Russell really can't see what's here, or do you think he's constrained politically? Somebody's beeping. He's constrained politically in what he can say. Andrew?
Yeah.
Ah,
you hear?
You're back.
Beautiful.
Okay, thank you. Oh, that was strange. So, yeah, to answer your question, Richard, when I read the article with Linda, and to me, she was pointing. Oh, she's excellent. I mean, she's an amazing journalist, and
I think the term I would use is deft. She knew who she was dealing with. She was trying to get him to push the envelope, and he came back with talcum powder.
Yeah, and it's funny. Even reading the article, kind of in between the lines and the unspoken ways, I heard a lot of and wells, and there was a lot of if the powder's covering the real surface, he was sprinkling it on there. Let's just put it that way.
And a little pixie dust in between. Now, is it your possible perception here or analysis that the really big bright one, the one that I would think would be newer, and then the satellite city, which is much grayer, is that because the surrounding dark charcoal type Ceres surface, which probably is very carbon rich, has been dusting this from meteor impacts, and that's what produces this relative brightness, indicative of maybe relative age?
I would think so. I'd go with that. Definitely.
Interesting. Okay, well, hold it there. Let's now move on to Keith Laney, because Keith, obviously, you have some thoughts about this, and then we will segue to what you've been doing, which is working on Pluto, where, lo and behold, we see the same kind of geometric domed arcologies, but in much better condition.
Yes, they certainly are. We've been looking at these Ceres Occidor images. And, the LZ2 image that Bob's been talking about, and we see it looks like it has a foundational wall inside of it. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, what I'm seeing when I look at that is I see it burst and laying all around it in pieces and is really devastated.
In other words, you're thinking an explosion.
Yes. Unlike LZ1, which you see it looks like a large dome that has pretty much just sat down on top of its contents. This one looks like it's exploded from the inside, and it's laying in pieces all around it.
So you'd interpret the bright satellite structures, buildings, whatever, as debris?
At this point, we're not really sure what they are. If you look at the southernmost one of them it's kind of square and has four little lights that are around it, and it's sitting over a trench. So
on image number 9, if you click on number 9, the one he's talking about is the one on the right-hand side below the lighter gray-type city geometry, and it's about at the 530 position.
And to get a better reference, I'm sitting here looking at my page. I have
take us to your page. By all means, take us to your page.
It's a series of anomalies.
Hang on. Go back to Other Side of Midnight.
Yes. Go back to Other Side of Midnight.
Go to the guest page. Scroll down to number 6 in the links above the pictures. Series of anomalies.
Okay, and then once you go there to series of anomalies, this is the last 3 images that are on this page. So you just scroll down toward the bottom.
Scrolling all the way. Scrolling.
And don't get caught on the other stuff that's already been there. We've already discussed that.
Scrolling. Keep those doggies. Go ahead.
Okay, and then you get down. You'll see my enlargement there that shows both of them.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well you can click on that, and that'll bring up an even larger one.
Got it.
Okay, now
look at this detail. Now NASA, when they put out images of things they don't want us to know is there, they JPEG the heck out of them. But they haven't done this with this image.
No, this image was in really good shape. And, they did it with a process. This image was actually 2 images converged into one. One of them was exposed to get the bright, and one of them was exposed to get the detail around it.
Right.
And they merged those images together and gave us this, and it's really remarkable. We've been into this image now for days, and I walked Andrew through the preliminary parts of his sketch, and I got to sit through the whole process of watching this appear clearer in his mind as he looked at it, and it was quite amazing. It really was quite an amazing story. And if you look at what Bob was terming LZ2, okay, and if you look at the
or we could also call it Fort Worth.
Yeah, well, if you look at the far northernmost end of it,
yeah,
and I've already said that it looks like it's exploded from the inside and it's laying in pieces.
Right.
But if you look at the far northernmost end of it, there's still a large chunk that is sitting down over top of that end of the foundation.
And at there seems to be like something like an ellipse below it. A shadowed line.
Yes, like combed. It looks like a comb.
Yeah.
And if you check, now, if you go back, we're looking at the large image now, but if you go back to the series of anomalies page,
Clicking
and
back.
you go to and go to the next image under this, and that is Andrew's art.
Yep.
If you click on that, I've got a much larger version of his work online where you can see even his little pen strokes, and he has captured that so well.
Oh yes. Oh, Andrew, how the heck did you do this?
Well, I got on my hyperdrive.
I was just going to say, how did you get to series and back before the show? This is really astonishing. Now, what's going to be cool is when they give us this kind of shot from Dawn, we're going to compare them side by side.
Yeah, that'll be a wonderful day.
Oh, my God. Look at what you've been able to see. Yeah, the reduced res version, which is on the site tonight, is nothing to compare to Keith's version, which is the full res of your artist rendition.
Actually, this is half res. The picture, the actual original that he's done is humongous. I couldn't display it for size purposes, so I kind of did the best I could to represent what it actually is and keep it within limits of what my website can withstand.
And you can scroll around this, using your up keys and down keys, and just look at you've got individual little girders, Andrew, I didn't see on the other version.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was, again, what Keith and I were talking about. You can see this ribbing and these what I think they're like gray lines. I mean, you can see it on the NASA data. I mean, I've enhanced it. I mean, I brought it out more just in keeping with what we're doing.
Well, it's a totally valid technique because that's what image enhancement in a computer or in a human brain is the same thing. Except I think you do it better.
Thank you.
How do you do this, Andrew? Is it done with a pencil? Is it actually drawn on a piece of paper in front of you, or is this done on a computer? I mean, this is amazing. You can see.
Thank you, man. Well, I it was with Keith first. We kind of talked about it, and we were on Skype, and we were sort of spitballing back and forth what we were sort of seeing and what I was seeing, and I would show him little sort of thumbnails. I mean, this is how I work in my industry because I'm an illustrator and a storyboard artist, and I often have to communicate this way with the people I work with. And coming from different perspectives is just something that I do. And I knew coming down a little bit more on more of an oblique three-quarter, we could see, we could conjecture more and see more. But
I have a suggestion, Andrew.
Yes.
If you're working in the film industry, you obviously must know a lot of producers and art directors and writers and all those people, right?
Yeah.
I would recommend taking this shot, full scale or maybe half scale because it probably won't transmit through an email, and match it side by side with the NASA vertical shot, appropriately labeled, Dawn mission, etc., and then your perspective view. And I would just send this to everybody in the industry and ask them, where is this? Just ask them that question. Make them wonder, because obviously when they see it, they're going to see what we're seeing, but when they know where it is, they're going to freak out.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. You're full of great ideas, Richard.
That's why I'm the captain.
Well, I'll guarantee you right now, NASA's seeing them.
See, this was what I'm frustrated with Russell. I mean, why can't they just tell us the damn truth? Mm-hmm. Why does he do this dance? I mean, we probably, if Rich is listening, if you can find with Ross's help, the link to earthfiles.com to the actual Linda Howe interview with Christopher Russell, the project scientist for Dawn, you got to read the official NASA-ese, and you should read it while you're looking at this. And then you'll see how much they're not telling us. And then you got to ask the question in your mind, why not? We pay their salaries. We pay their missions. We pay for their technology. We pay for everything. So why have we had to wait 50, 60 years to see this?
Well, we're doing such a good job of it now, they really don't have to on this particular series of stuff.
Well, on that note, hold it, everybody. We are at another break. You're all on the other side of midnight. My name is Richard C. Hoagland. My guests this morning are Will Farrer, Robert Harrison, Keith Laney, and Andrew Curry. And we are going to be right back. We are back. And boy, are we back. I've got 4 amazing guests this morning, Will and Robert and Keith and Andrew. And Keith was going on and on and on about Andrew's techniques about how this rendition was created because it's so faithful to the NASA vertical shot. Andrew, I can't get over. I can't say enough good things about how you do this in your head, and it winds up looking like the rest of us are seeing it but having a clue as to how to do this.
Well, it is a dance. I mean, I have to pull out real wide, real fast, and then come in real close to try to get, what I'm sort of seeing and what I'm feeling in, on this flat image, right? And give it a little bit of perspective and give it a little bit of depth and give it a little bit of life. So I am dancing around the thing. I'm pulling out, I'm going in, and that's just part of the process. But like I said, this was a tough one for a lot of reasons because it is a demolition site, in my opinion, and as we said, it's a haunting. It is a Titanic. It's almost mystical in a way, which I think a lot of this exploration is. In our solar system.
Well, given that this technology, this culture, this incredible civilization that did this obviously knew the importance of 19.5 in the physics, and they placed this city, this incredible dome city now collapsed exactly in the center of the crater at 19.5, they must have wanted to be there for a reason, and part of the reason may have been that when we got there, to look at what they had done, it was because they wanted us to come and find out what they had done and what maybe they had done wrong, so their cycle, their life history, their sojourn in the system did not end the way we want ours to not end, but ended very badly. At least that's kind of like in other words, they want us to intrude because only by intruding will we learn, and we must learn lest we follow them.
Exactly.
Keith, where do you want to go now?
Okay, we can go over to the Pluto stuff.
Okay, let us go back. I want to get out of this. So I want to do there. Okay. Okay, so we're back on othersideofmidnight.com, guest page, and which link now?
The dark areas.
Right under number 6 at the top of the page, under Radio with Pictures, the dark areas. Now, did you mean that just literally or figuratively or metaphorically or?
Well, actually I do, but the thing about this is that I didn't name this. This is on the image. It's on the image file name.
Oh, from NASA.
Yes. From
New Horizons, from Alan Stern. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And as you know, I hang on every word they say, literally, and he knows this. However, this image gave me a little bit of a start when I got to looking at it. If you go down on this page, you see I'm calling it Arcology Row. Mm-hmm. Now we're looking at the edge of this great big ice ocean.
Called Sputnik Planum.
Sputnik Planum. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing are these regularly spaced geometric arcologies. These are some of the best that we've seen as far as what humans tend to look for when they're looking for artificiality, and that's square objects with right angles, something that looks like we might have built it.
Yep. Rectilinear geometry. Good old rectilinear geometry.
Now, if you look at the first image that's on that page, that's almost half of the entire photograph. And if you click on that, it opens up a much larger version of the entire photograph.
Okay, I'm clicking now. Othersideofmidnight.com, link number 7, the dark areas. pull that page up, click on the first image, and that takes, oh my God, that takes us to the full image they released, what, yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
No, Thursday.
Thursday, yes.
Yeah. By the way,
this is, of course, I've expanded this. This image is quite a lot larger than native form.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Did they actually hold a press conference today?
I don't recall hearing of one.
Because I don't see anything in the news about a New Horizons press conference.
Well, and there are no new images either. And as good as these images are, they're still the browse data set.
Well, keep in mind that the images we got weeks ago, like 6 weeks ago, that we talked about on the show in that time frame, they were taken from roughly 47,000 miles. These, they say, are taken from 50,000. So they're roughly comparable. There's nothing super high res here. It's the standard. It's like they have to stand off because they don't dare yet show us what this looks like close up. Would that be
that's the reason why I bring them up, so we can see them using tried and true imaging techniques, and I try not to push the image too far. This one didn't have JPEG artifacts per se in it.
Wow.
You're starting to see some coming apart on some of the larger enhancements that are done, but I try to stay as true as possible to actual. And if you click out of that image, we can go on down, because there's some stunning things that need to be seen in this area.
So we go back to the dark areas. The page that you're looking at. Then we scroll down to the second image on the... Oh, I see. You've enlarged.
To the second.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And now this is just a cut of just what I'm calling Arcology Row. If you click on that, of course, it also opens up into a much larger image.
Look at all that geometry.
Well, if you look along I'm looking along the coast, along the edge of this ice ocean. Mm-hmm. And if you're near the right-hand side, as you're going from the center to right, I'm counting 5 large square arcologies sitting there.
Mm-hmm. Without roofs.
Yes, without roofs. And I think isn't that something? All these don't have tops on them, and you can peer down into them. And that is a result of what, Richard?
Well, my best guess at the moment, and it really is just a guess, is that if you had a huge city... I mean, the size of this stuff, these arcologies are on the order of 20, 30, 40, 50. The big one up at the top is probably 50 miles long. 50 miles. Think about that. And we can now see interior geometry. If you have people, and again, we're looking at like a Titanic gravesite, because obviously folks died here by the millions. When they die, and is still contained, all the atmospheric products, oxygen, chemicals, petrochemicals, the dissolution of the organics, as decomposition sets in, produces an awful brew which would eat through, literally corrode and eat through structure. And I think we're looking at the internal corrosion and the collapse of the roofs, and then the venting to space of the rest of that material. And then it's frozen in time and frozen in a vacuum, and it's like looking at Ashurbanipal or, Ur or any of the ancient cities in the Mideast, except you're sitting on a planet which basically has no air, is much smaller than any planet we've ever looked at, 1,500 miles across, and this series of arcologies, staggeringly massive arcologies, are all sitting along the sides of what could have been an ancient ocean.
Right. Right now this is a big frozen sea. But maybe, who knows? Millions of years ago, when all this was active, this might have been a lush, warm place. But I mean, you never know. The atmosphere might have been engineered. This civilization had high technology, no doubt about it. And I'm not sure they were Type 2 because they didn't escape this cataclysm. However,
unless it overtook them. I mean, look, if as we're kind of projecting there was a war, think of it as kind of a mega 9/11. There was no warning. So the fact that they had technology doesn't mean anything, because if you catch people by surprise, surprise attack, they are toast.
Well, how about this, Richard? Then suppose as our solar system goes wheeling around the galaxy at what speed at a pretty good clip. I'm not going to quote the exact figure. However, what if periodically we encounter large debris fields in the galaxy? And that could have happened also.
But you see that's something that a highly technical civilization would know. They would have deep radar. They'd have early warning system. They'd have all kinds of wonderful ways of seeing anything coming. No, this is man-made. If there's a catastrophe...
If you're not a type 2 civilization and you can't freely leave your star system to another system, whether you see it coming or not, you're trapped.
That's possible. Okay.
This is all entirely speculation.
Yeah, of course. Now, we will not know unless we land. By the way, do you notice what I'm noticing in the big arcology?
There's all sort of things in that big arcology.
No, just stand back. All right, there's a big central feature.
Yes, there's a large central support.
There's 2 satellite features, one on the left, one on the right. This is the top of picture number 2 on your dark areas page. Mm-hmm. But if you complete the geometry of the one in the middle, that's an equilateral triangle truncated. Mm-hmm. The top of it's been maybe buried under the ice.
Well, I see in that large arcology, I see the exact same shapes as what we're seeing on Ceres with the Lonely Mountain.
Yes.
This one is a pretty good bit more torn up, and probably a pretty good bit larger, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I think it's between 30 and 40 miles long, that large area between the 2 satellites. And we're at the top of the picture on Keith's page, where you get to it by going to othersideofmidnight.com, clicking on the guest page tonight, scroll down to number 7 link, click on the link, that takes you to his page, and we're scrolling down to image number 2 on Keith's page.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can back out of this large image and on further down the page. Okay. I have these individually detailed.
Okay, so let's do that.
Matter of fact, they're right up under that image. You see the first one is a detail of that magnificent rectangular one where you can see all the geometry down in it. It's right on the side of the sea.
Okay.
Something also, Richard, the dark area that's behind this place, could you imagine if a large tidal wave, imagine this was once an ocean, and a large tidal wave coming from the center and washing over this area, would it perhaps cause the type of destruction that we see on these arcologies? All the tops missing, and also, look at the large one, which direction the top is missing on it. It's missing out towards the ocean, not
exactly. Yes.
Well, and if you look, we're not looking at it right now, but back up at the larger whole image, if you look right south of this group of arcologies, there is the largest collection of mist and junk and straight lines and basically the parts from all this stuff that's broken apart, just washed in great big piles.
Yeah. Obviously, everybody's going to have to linger and look and go back and look again and go away and take walks and come back and look.
It took me all yesterday and part of this morning just to actually soak all this in and be able to see it, because at first I was kind of disappointed until, it's just a process. You look at it, you don't see it, and you just let it sink into your mind for a while, and after a while the geometry start popping out at you. If you look at number 1 detail, it's that rectangular area. Well, if you look at number 2, which is on the image over the second arcology over from it, it's really similar. It's even oriented in the same way. See number 2 there?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, if you get down to 3, that's the furthest one to the right, and that's another one of those. It's kind of torn up, but it is another one of those Lonely Mountain looking shapes, which you have speculated about possibly being a spacecraft.
The one on Ceres, given how it looks like it's buried under one side and it's so pristine, it's almost like it was held somewhere in reserve. And after all the you-know-what hit the fan, they came back and they landed, and then they had to stay because they either crashed or somebody died or a lot of people died, something. So we've got one in much better condition than even the ones on Pluto, but it's like a rarity. It's like it doesn't belong there. It's telling us something extraordinary about this. Can you imagine when we find the libraries and video? I mean, that's what a private mission could do to both places. We could send a private mission, a robotic mission to Pluto with the state-of-the-art that now exists, particularly with ion drive. We could get, halfway, turn around, slow down, go into orbit, and get much closer images from orbit. I don't think we could, with private resources, put a rover down on the surface, but I think we could definitely put an orbiter in orbit with an ion-propelled spacecraft, so you could get these, from 10 times, 100 times closer. good grief, what we would see. Did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
If you go down to now, we can go down to the last image on the page.
Hang on one sec. Andrew wants to ask me something. Go ahead.
Hi, Richard. Just reeling back a little bit on what Keith was talking about possibly our solar system. It is like a great arc passing through, our galaxy. What about the idea of the exploded planet hypothesis? And if there was a planet in our solar system that was obliterated, however it may have been obliterated, that it changed the physics of the solar system, which is what you talk about a lot, like the actual hyperdimensional physics actually changes, and that could have caused catastrophic effects on these planets.
Yeah, that's my preferred model. Going back to Tom Van Flandern and our work together on the planet, where Mars currently is, it was actually Planet 5 that blew up or was blown up. In the war scenario, it was blown up. That would have been probably such a shock and so unexpected, and it may have been an accident. It may have been, like when you're playing around with super weapons, if you hit the wrong button, whoops. Like Governor Perry, whoops. This all could have happened internally in terms of this system, and we're looking at the after effects. I mean, the scale of this architecture. And there's no doubt this is architecture because mountains do not fall. I absolutely will defy anyone to find any structures on Earth flying over any mountains, the Andes, the Rockies, the Alps, whatever, that sees things that look like this with the internal organized geometry that we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the next image down, and the last one on the page that shows that mother of all arcologies, as close as you can get it. I'm not going to push this image any further than that.
No.
But if you look down inside of this thing, look at about the 11:30, 12 o'clock position. Do you see the two large chunks of it? One of it is still connected to the outside and hanging over, and the other side is a big chunk that is broken off and is laying in the bottom. You can see it, as well as about the 9 o'clock position and about the 7 o'clock position, and then even down here at the 6 o'clock position, you see a couple little pieces that are from the edge that are laying down inside this thing.
And these are huge.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm guessing this thing right here is probably 20, 30 miles wide. It's huge.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, at the upper end of that roughly equilateral triangle, big one in the middle with the two satellites on each side, toward the upper left position, like at about the 11 o'clock position, there appears to be a tendril or a strand of something that goes from light to dark, and there's two light areas on the other side. It almost looked like some kind of, if you were in Utah, you'd say this was an eroded natural bridge, something took away what's underneath, and you're looking at a 3D effect of something over something. Mm-hmm. Just muse on this geometry, because this is not natural geometry in any way, shape, or form.
And you know what? You can look at this, and I have been studying these details for several hours now. And one of the most remarkable things on this image, on this particular cut of the image, isn't on the arcologies, but it's right below them. It's nearly center of the image, mm-hmm. and along the bottom edge, there is a large V-shaped.
Yes, I see it.
Thing
I see it.
With it looks like a set of dice.
Extending down toward the bottom with the.
It looks like a set of dice laying on top of each other.
Yes.
I mean, that to me is pretty remarkable, because I look for things that could not possibly be natural, and straight rectangles with regular holes through them. That's pretty unnatural.
Little boxes. Little boxes.
Well, let me share some observations about this place, because.
Please.
I've been looking at this, and I get that same feeling that Andrew is talking about. When you look at something, I feel the disturbance in the force when I look at this.
Like we're looking at a sacred grave.
Yes, we're looking at, I've never much believed in any ancient alien origin, because mm-hmm. every depiction I've ever seen of ancient gods looked like humans, whether they were wearing animal heads as an aspect or whatever, sitting in a flying dragon or in a Vimana or whatever. They still look human to me. Okay. Now, I do believe in ancient astronauts, because I think they were us.
Family.
Okay.
I've said from the beginning, we're looking at family, the ruins, the detritus, the extraordinarily destroyed sweep of an ancient civilization that was our great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmothers.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're looking at these things, these huge, cracked and broken shells that used to be filled with living beings.
Yeah.
They were built by us, and we just so happen to be unfortunate. About the time it takes us to climb out of the caves and onto the planets, there comes some natural or self-caused cataclysm that puts us right back in the caves.
Will, you've been very silent, very patient. Thank you. It's kind of one heck of a way to join the club, but what do you think?
I'm taking in the 7 o'clock position on the big one here. There's you've got it's like an open V shape, and it just I can't take my eyes off of it. The geometry of it is you're right. You can't take it. You can't go anywhere in a plane and take this type of picture here over any mountain. It's totally amazing, especially when you get up into this, really up into it, because you don't get to see these images too much. We've got another year's worth of data to come back. I was reading today, so we've got all sorts of stuff. We're going to see this in pretty high resolution. A lot of people don't realize this stuff was, these pictures happened in a very short period of time, and since it's so far away, it's sending the data back very slowly. But I'm stuck on that, and it looks like I'm thinking we're looking at an ice ocean. We build here, I mean, what's some of the best real estate is on our coast. Yeah, it's the coastline. It's where I'm 10 minutes from a beach myself.
You're in Maryland, right?
Yeah, I'm near Ocean City, Maryland, about 10 minutes outside of Ocean City, Maryland. And all along each coastline, everybody seems to build, and you just can't find these. And I'm not sure. We're still at a good step back, so we're starting to get it in.
This image was taken from roughly 50,000 miles away. The closest images were taken a little over 7,000 miles away. So we're talking imagery that could be 7 times better. 7 times 7 is 49, so 7,000 times 7 is 50,000, roughly 49,000 miles. We're going to get better detail by a factor of 7 if they show us. I am kind of intrigued politically because I thought today was going to be a big reveal. And it sounds to me like they're inching toward the goalpost, but they haven't decided to really drop the hammer yet and let us see in stunning detail exactly what we know what we're looking at. But most folks looking at this, they won't know what they're looking at unless we show them, guide them.
Well, this is nonetheless a big reveal. It's a picture slap full of arcologies. What bigger reveal could they get other than they being better pictures? That's the only thing they can do to top this.
I want better pictures.
Oh, yes.
I want better pictures. I paid for those better pictures, as Mr. Reagan said. I want my pictures.
Well, it strikes me, though, the sheer tragedy of what happened here.
Oh my God! Yes.
You know how Obi-Wan felt when Alderaan blew up. When you look on this image, it's just striking. You think about it, and the size of this. If these were arcologies and they were full of people, that wasn't millions or billions. That was trillions of people, and this was solar system wide. Every one of these arcologies that we're looking at across the solar system that's all blown up were full of people.
Yep. No, undoubtedly, and the war took them all out. Talk about echoes down through time, gentlemen. Talk about a haunted... It's not a hidden mission, Keith. It's a haunted mission.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I should have called this, instead of Arcology Road, I should have called this one Pluto's Graveyard.
I mean, to me, it's eerie. We did not plan this way, but it's so eerie that this is coming on the eve or the afternoon or the aftermath of the celebration, if I can call it that, which is a horrible thing to say. 14 years after 9/11. Yesterday was 9/11. This is a solar system 9/11 on a scale that you can't even grasp what happened to destroy what we're seeing, because what we're seeing is only dimly reflected in what Andrew's done. Andrew, are you going to tackle this and show us 3D? I know, sometimes I ask too much.
Well, it's funny, when you talked about Titanic, I had actually, a few weeks back, had scrolled through some of the Titanic these amazing photos of the Titanic destruction, and it's so somber. And I thought to myself, is this what it looks like inside these things? And I would love to get inside one of these suckers. That's sort of what I'd love to do. I'd love to work with you guys, all of you, to think about what we might be seeing. And I know, Keith, you had the science fiction artists who are incredible. Just imagine this, or even I think Richard, you and Keith last week were talking about, or recently we're talking about Geiger and what informed Geiger. And yeah, and this brings me back.
This is very Geiger-esque.
Yeah,
it's very Geiger-esque. And for anybody who doesn't know who Geiger is the brilliant artist who did the artwork and the models and the sets and all that, or did the templates for those sets in Alien. The first really alien movie I think I ever saw. Yeah. And in a conversation with Keith, and Keith, I hope you don't mind me saying this, we were kind of in our long Skype conversation, which went by in an hour and a half. We talked about, and this goes back to some of the stuff I had talked about in our previous thing on Alan Bean, is, in all of us is a collective memory of everything that's happened since the universe began. So maybe for some of us, as you talk about, Richard, there's a resonant quality that comes from looking at this kind of stuff and analyzing it, and maybe even just appearing here together, like, pebbles gathering in the water that's, the water's pushed the pebbles together type of thing. And
we're billion-year-old carbon.
Yes, quoting a very nice song.
Yeah.
I just had another thought. What if all the people who look at this and don't see what we see can't see it psychologically because their trauma, their deaths, their reincarnative memories of when they lived here is so awful, so horrible, they've literally suppressed it for millions of years.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's just a lot easier to forget about it than it is to face it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, who was it? Was it Graham who talks about where mankind and amnesia?
Yes. I believe you're right.
But I don't think he's been thinking big enough.
And if we don't remember, if we don't learn something from this, they left us everywhere for us to find. Very Clarkian. Okay, they left all this for us to find, so we can escape this fate. Because obviously, if it can take them out, we don't stand a chance.
Absolutely. Hold it there. You're on the other side of midnight. My name is Richard C. Hoagland, and we shall be right back. And we are back on the other side of midnight with my guests this morning, Will Farrer, Robert Harrison, Keith Laney, Andrew Curry. And Robert, you have been too quiet. Robert.
Hello, yes, I've been on mute, so I wouldn't interfere with anything. Yes, I think Keith has done a very good job there.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I hadn't had time really to look at the new Pluto picture.
Okay, well, why don't you look and just give us a kind of a stream of consciousness? Just what are your first impressions? Because I hadn't seen any of these. I had one quick shot of one of the news Post piece yesterday, but I've had no time to do what he's done, and I have lost all my socks. My sock drawer is empty tonight, Keith, because of this.
Well, there are actually a lot more of these hollowed-out mountains, as we'll call them, but some of them, the detail inside them,
they ain't really, mountains.
It really gives you the idea that they are arcologies, aren't they?
Yeah. See, now the thing that I'm intrigued with, and I want you to all comment on this. I've had several outrageous thoughts in looking at this, these two missions, the Dawn mission and the New Horizons mission. It almost looks to me like NASA's very deliberately held the best for last, waited for the right timing as we approach the 2016 cycle, because that's when the physics is up. When surf's up, you can surf. When the physics is up, you can grab people's consciousness and get beyond the fear, get beyond the fear porn, get beyond the knee-jerk reaction that, oh my God, there's aliens out there, and get people to think about what this means on a much bigger scale than just us on this little speck of dust.
Have you seen the one comment that I've seen that NASA have made about this particular picture, which is this dark area in the centre between the what we're calling the ecologies and the cratered area, which is, are these giant sand dunes?
Oh, give me a break. It's like we pay these people billions of dollars and they come up with pixie dust and sand dunes? Come on.
Yeah, we already know about the poofy dust thing. That's been an excuse before.
But
I have a dune buggy.
I did see as part of that. Now, all right, let me back up. If you see the arcologies at the top of that last image, and then you see that dark, triangular, dark area taking about half the frame, extending down to the very bottom, and then you look at around the arcologies, you see those lighter, darker regions that looks like swirls or little lineaments that change direction in curves. If those are sand dunes or dunes of some kind, that reinforces one of those outrageous models I'm thinking of is, suppose the Pluto we see now is not the Pluto that actually existed when this stuff was built. Suppose Pluto was much closer to the Sun, like maybe where Ceres is, and it had an atmosphere, and the atmosphere was nitrogen and a little oxygen and a few other things, and then either because of the war or because it was deliberately moved, because this technology that we're proposing, hyperdimensional physics, can move planets, it was moved to where it is now in a 17-degree angled orbit with Charon, with the other little satellites, as an archive, as a repository, as a record of, for God's sake, don't let this happen again. And everything froze. The atmosphere would have frozen, right?
Yep.
That's what would have created a planet where you have dunes that are impossible now, frozen seas of nitrogen, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, because it's all not where it used to be. It's all frozen because they moved it out to where it would be in a cryo vault waiting for us to come and find it.
That's a very interesting speculation, Richard. And of course, planetary scientists now tend to think that planets have been naturally migrating around the solar system, in the very early stages, so that like one model has Jupiter and Saturn migrating close to the Sun, and then through their interaction when they got close to the Sun, migrating back out to where they are now.
And moving Uranus and Neptune gravitationally with them and that kind of thing.
And interacting, I suppose, with the formation of the rocky planets in the inner solar
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is pure artificial high technology that literally said we must leave a marker, and we must leave enough of a marker so they know who we were, they know what we did, and they never do it again.
Well, there are some things about the inner solar system, aren't there? The so-called Mercury hexagon and the Venus pentagram, which is when oppositions or conjunctions of Mercury with Earth and the Sun, and Venus and Earth and the Sun. If you plot out where those occur on Earth and Venus's orbit, you plot out an almost exact pentagram. It rotates slowly over time, and the same kind of thing with Mercury, only you end up with a hexagram. And so the speculation of actually the planets, those planets in the inner solar system actually being deliberately changed to create those effects as a possible signal from past visitors. So that would possibly would fit in with your scenario there, that things have been shifted around to leave a message.
Well,
and in this case, Pluto being moved very far away.
Well, not only move far away, because that would cryopreserve, but if you had it in the plane of the solar system, like all the rest of the planets, if you blew up a planet, if we go with Van Flanderen's model, that there was another planet in between Jupiter and Mars, or actually where Mars is now, and Mars and some other guys orbited like moons this other planet. And that blew up, or was blown up, via the technologies that Joseph Farrell and I have discussed. And the result was the pulverization of trillions and trillions and trillions of tons of planetary material into fine micron-sized dust. That sweeping across something at miles per second would be the most destructive blast wave you can imagine. It would obliterate everything in the plane of the system that did not have an atmosphere. But if you put something in a highly inclined orbit, like 17 degrees, that would keep it most of the time above or below this equatorial dust plane in the system, and would preserve it from these abrasive micrometeorite impacts that would keep it pretty much the way it was, particularly if you put it far enough out there where it was basically in cryo-cold at hundreds of degrees below zero, and almost nothing happens at those temperatures.
Yes.
This is a good thought.
And the neat part is we can find out. We ourselves, and everyone listening tonight, we can fund missions now, private missions, particularly if we get, the ear and the eye and the help of a certain Mr. Elon Musk and other people like him. We can go and find out. We now know what there is to find. We now know how to go and find it. We just have to basically accumulate the resources to go and do it. The technology is now... Remember the Bionic Man? We have the technology. We have the technology to go there ourselves with robots and find out, as Paul Harvey said, the rest of the story.
Yeah, we no longer have to rely on NASA or a government agency to tell us or to hand us stuff. No more delays. No more issues with spacecraft as they find stuff. As we move into exciting places, there's always that little bit of an issue with the spacecraft. This happened in both of these missions. They just bide them a little bit more time to look over the imagery before we get to see it. It would be amazing to actually get the funding for something like that. I mean, they're talking about just trying to get the funding to go to Mars. When you see this stuff, it's not just Mars. There's
well, remember, Mars is in the plane. Mars has an atmosphere. The stuff on Mars is in such awful shape and decay compared to this. This is where you'll find the libraries.
Yeah, it's such as the moon is too. And the moon has the same type of arcologies on it. Mars has the same kind of arcologies on it. They're everywhere, which shows you that we were truly a solar system-wide civilization.
Yep. Okay, guys, if anybody has any further thoughts, don't be shy. Tell us. Otherwise, I'm going to open the lines because I'm sure there's lots of people out there, because I know it, because I can see things popping up on the screen. There may be some folks that want to ask us some specific questions, so if you want to join us, call us at Enterprise Mission. That's on Skype. I would prefer that because the sound quality is much better. Or you can use a smartphone or a regular phone or your kitchen phone or your cell phone or your dog's phone. 505-796-8802. 505-796-8802. And we will entertain whatever thoughts you have up until the top of the hour. And we are working on a third hour, folks, so be patient. This conversation is not going to stop. It's going to continue. And let's see, there's something in the back of my mind I wanted to ask Will. You've now been looking at the stuff on Mars taken from Curiosity. I think we're going to have to do that in a whole other show where we actually spend a couple hours, maybe 3 hours, on just that planet, that place, because...
There is an amazing amount of material there, and when I get the same feeling you guys are feeling looking at these ruins, that the horrible nature of what happened to this place. We call it Uncle Jake's Junkyard over at the channel. It's kind of our terms because everything is in devastation. Yeah. And I would love to come back because I know a lot of my Mars buddies were really excited. I told them, I was like, look, this is the time we need to be talking about Ceres. I'm excited to get on the show. This is a good time to get in and sit back, meet some new people, and move forward. We're in like I said, we're in a networking phase here. Andrew looks like Nancy wants to add something as well.
Yeah. And then we have a caller who actually made it in. So caller, you wait there, and we'll take Andrew first, and then I'll go to you.
Yeah, real quick, Richard, you talk a lot about timing or a ritualistic kind of processing going on, and you talk about December being when we get these new series images. Am I right on that one?
In December, early December, mid-December, they're going to lower the orbit from 900 miles down to 235 miles.
Okay.
And that means we'll have at least 3 times better resolution on the series imagery, Occoter City, Dallas, Fort Worth, whatever you want to call it, than we have now. Right. Obviously, nothing's going back to Pluto on the foreseeable future because it's so far away, and the energy for chemical rockets to get there. I mean, it took New Horizons almost 10 years to get there at the fastest speed of any spacecraft we'd ever sent anywhere in space. So we got to go the next level of technology with Pluto, which means we got to have ion drive. We've got to have, robotic technology. We've got to have a much better communication system, probably laser as opposed to S-band, radio communication. But it can be done. I mean, in terms of series, I think I can see a Kickstarter mission that could basically assemble, please mute your mic, Keith, please, that could assemble the resources to do this, and then we simply hire the best and the brightest. We're not going to build a spacecraft. We're going to hire the guys that do this for a living, and we'll pay them like NASA does, but we'll be in charge. We'll be deciding what images are released and when.
Richard,
all of them.
Oops, sorry.
Exactly.
Sorry, Will.
Okay, let us ask who our caller is. Please give us your name, where you're calling from.
Yeah, hi, Richard. My name is Ronald, and I'm calling from Malibu.
Ah, a lovely Malibu tonight on a Saturday morning night. What do you want to ask?
Yeah, it's nice. Well, I got a Canon 7D camera with an 18 to 35 millimeter lens this year, and I just recently started taking pictures of the moon just so I could throw it into Photoshop and take a look at it. So I took some pictures of the full moon, or it was nearly a full moon, probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I dropped them into Photoshop, and I didn't do anything. I just pulled up the first image of the full moon, and it was really bright. And when I reduced the exposure, I noticed that on the top half of the moon, there's a bluish outline, and on the bottom half of the moon, there's like a yellowish outline.
What kind of did you attach this to a telescope, or is this just a long lens on your camera?
Just a long lens on my camera.
Okay, so you're looking through lenses, right?
Yes.
That's called prismatic dispersion. It's like a rainbow effect because of the differential refraction of glass, and the red light moves different speed than blue light, so you get this. It's basically a chromatic aberration. So that's all that you're looking at is something in your lens, in your camera, and not on the moon.
I see. All right, and that was basically my question. I'm just starting to take pictures of the moon, and I want to mess around with them in Photoshop to see what kind of things I can do with it, like what you guys are doing, see if I can see some things for myself. Because I hear all about this, and I'm interested in finding out the truth about things for myself. And I've been looking around.
The problem with that is the structures on the moon, and there are structures there, and I've actually put up, not on the site recently, but in my book, Dark Mission, I put imagery from 3 separate amateur astronomers who are using CHD cameras and like 14-inch telescopes, which is, Celestron, Meade, whatever. You can photograph structures on the moon with the technology you describe, but you need a decent-sized amateur telescope, and you need to take lots and lots of pictures so you can only add the ones where the atmosphere has been frozen so that you stop the blurring due to the scintillation of the atmosphere. Okay, I think we've lost him. Hello? Okay, we're getting some kind of weird sound.
Sorry about that. I walked too far away from it.
Oh, can I do that? Okay.
Yeah, I'm on a wireless headset.
Not a good idea. So, was that it?
Well, yeah, that's it. I'm going to do what you said. I'm going to get a telescope and start.
I'd recommend a 14-inch, and I also recommend a webcam. Forget the high-end, expensive Nikon and all that. Use a webcam. Put it on video, take lots of video, and then there are programs called Registax is one of them, which is free on the web. You can actually sort and stack the images that are not blurred, the best of, and you'll see astonishing detail even our own moon, even with amateur equipment. That's how good the technology now is.
Awesome.
Well, and if you want, that's a really valiant effort to photograph the moon and do that. It's really worthy. But if you really would like to study anomalies and the things up close, that what we're seeing, the panoramic photos from Apollo are online in full glory. There's nothing like them. And of course, the lunar reconnaissance orbiter is going around the moon all the time, taking big, beautiful pictures, and they're all online.
Okay, and I have another question then too, and I'm gonna look into all that's what you just said. But Richard, you had mentioned one time before I called in to ask about how to get video footage of the Earth, from space. Mm-hmm. Did you say to look at footage from the SR-71? Is that what you said?
No. SR-71 was a high-altitude reconnaissance military aircraft that only flew at like 70,000 feet. That'll give you a good comparison. In other words, if you find those declassified spy SR-71 images, it gives you a kind of a baseline for what stuff looks like from altitude, high res,
right.
And then you use that as a comparison to compare side by side what we're seeing, let's say, on Pluto, and you're going to see geometry on the SR-71 stuff, you're going to see geometry on Pluto, you'll look at them side by side. That geometry, as Sagan said, is the indicative hallmark of intelligent life on Earth.
Yeah, and throughout the solar system.
And throughout the solar system, yes.
Totally. Well, you guys are doing a great job. Keep at it. I trust you guys a heck of a more lot than I trust NASA.
Thank you.
All righty. All right, have a good night, fellas.
Good night. Okay, guys, we got a few minutes left. Why don't each of you do summations? We'll start with Will, because we started with Will before.
Yeah, just blown away. The whole show here is just where to begin. Anybody who wants to send those pictures or is interested in the anomaly hunting, come on, check us out. The web, whatsupinthesky.com. We get you all. We've got our links in there. It'll tie you into all of our groups, especially anybody interested in looking at the photos. Now I've got I hadn't looked at these Pluto images before, so now I am actually going to be addicted to Pluto images.
We've made you a lot more work, yes.
Yeah, for the next year. So hopefully we get, let's say...
You don't have a year. You have till Christmas.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. This year's flown by.
And at Christmas, we get huge... Guys, do you realize the coincidence of what's happening at Christmas? We get the lowest resolution images on Ceres, the highest res. We get much better res by then, I believe, if the trend curve is followed, on Pluto. And Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End on 4 nights comes to sci-fi for the first time ever.
Don't forget Star Wars, The Force Awakens.
Star Wars, But I'm kind of preferential to Clarke. And Childhood's End is the perfect movie to put on, because that's what we're going through, guys. We're going through Childhood's End. We're about to become, again, an interplanetary species.
I can't wait. I can't wait to watch it happen, and hopefully it happens in my lifetime.
We've got 4 minutes left. Robert, what do you got to say?
Yes, things are going to get even better with the high-resolution stuff. We could be on the verge of something really big here. So stay tuned.
Andrew.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Nice to meet you, Will and Robert, finally. And Keith, so good to work with you. And Richard, thank you so much for having me on the show once again. It's just been an absolute thrill. Great energy. And let's just keep chasing those haunted sites.
Keith?
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody coming and paying attention to our crazy little image show. And I hope we shook your world up a little bit tonight, because this is really deserving of world-shaking thought.
Well, if the Internet's supposed to live up to its billing, people should be texting and forwarding addresses and links and emails and images all over the planet now, because that's what you're supposed to do. Compare with your friends, look at the images, see if you see what we see. If you don't see what we see, send us email. At the top of the page, othersideofmidnight.com, there's a section on the right, which I frankly want to change to open hailing frequencies. It says contact, which is so boring. So go to the right-hand side, go to contact at the moment, scroll down, you'll find my email there. You'll find Ross, our producer. You'll find Rich, our webmaster. Send us your comments. Tell us what you'd like to see more of. Tell us what you think about what you've heard and seen tonight. And give us feedback. We want feedback because this is the first across-the-board non-preferential poll. Can you see what we see in terms of an ancient civilization that is all around us, that our government has chosen not to talk about? Anybody?
Well, yeah, as you can see, you can see their point, though, to be a little cautious with this. Look how tragic this is.
It's awful.
Could you imagine if this news would have came out in the late 40s, early 50s?
Yeah.
We've been conditioned, our whole culture and the culture of all these scientists that are taking these pictures and theorizing about what's here. They were raised in the same culture we were. And our heroes were space explorers. Our heroes were people who reached out and grabbed the unknown and showed it to everybody. And being steeped in that same culture, they see the same thing we see. They just can't say.
Of course
they just can't say. But that's okay. We can.
Well, they may say it on a timetable, and who knows? They may have released the series images at 1:30 during the middle of my show Wednesday night because they want us to be the stalking horse. They want to see what we would do, how we would assemble the data, how we would analyze the first cut, how we'd present it, to basically take their cues from how people will respond. So, folks, please respond. Let us know what you think. If you think we're nuts, tell us that. If you see exactly what we see, tell us that. Now, I have some new news. We normally don't do this, but I'm going to do it again tonight, this morning. On Tuesday morning show, my guest will be David Dissler. For those of you with good memories, David Dissler is an engineer who has built a home-brewed version of the EM drive, the space drive where you put electricity in and thrust comes out without throwing anything out the back. It's not a rocket, it's a true space drive. And Dave is going to update us on his progress. He's going to show us some videos of his tests. And I'll break the news now. He's had positive results. We're going to track through that because you hook an EM drive to a standard spacecraft bus with cameras and electronics and communications, we could be at Pluto in a matter of days as opposed to years to put something into orbit and take much higher resolution of these images. And there's our music. And once again, we wrap up another week on the other side of midnight. Please, everyone, join us on Tuesday morning when Dave shows us how we just might in this generation conquer and explore the solar system. Not the government, not other governments, but you and I. So until then, until next Tuesday morning, remember, third star on the left, straight on, till morning.